You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. On today's show, we're going to go around the conference as 6 Kentucky players had their legal charges dismissed, and we're back at practice. Still no starting quarterback named at Auburn, and Todd Grantham takes a shot at Tennessee. And guess who is visiting Alabama Ole Miss this weekend? We'll get you caught up on all of that. Also, our buddy Matt Moscona, he caught up with Cole Cubelic on his Baton Rouge radio show, talking all things SEC, so we'll let you hear some of that conversation. But I am Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and LockedOnSEC.com. All right, plenty to jump into. Let's do it.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we go around the conference, starting over at Auburn. Still no decision announced yet on who will start at quarterback for Auburn as they take on LSU this Saturday night in Baton Rouge. Speaking with the media again yesterday, head coach Bryan Harsin said no starting quarterback has been decided yet, but whoever is under center will face a tough challenge in taking on LSU in Death Valley at night. We'll continue to monitor the situation, of course, but we may not know until they take the field on Saturday night, whether it's going to be Bo Nix or TJ Finley getting the start for Auburn. If I had my pick, if I had to make my guess, I would say they roll with Bo Nix. He's your starter. He had a bad half of football against Georgia State last week. I would still go with Bo Nix, because the problem is if you bench Bo Nix, you've announced to your team probably not going back to him. It's TJ Finley's game for the rest of the year. Bo had some good games earlier in the year. I think you stick with Bo Nix, but we'll see what Bryan Harsin decides on Saturday night. Over in Lexington, back in March, 6 Kentucky football players were allegedly involved in an incident at an off-campus frat party. Those players, Reuben Adams, Robert McClain, Andrew Phillips, Ernest Sanders, and DeVito Tisdale, Joel Williams. They were held out of practice as they faced charges stemming from the incident. But on Monday, it was reported the players were back at practice, and yesterday, charges against all 6 players were dismissed by a grand jury. The Wildcats host Florida Saturday night in Lexington. That place is going to be rocking, and good timing for Kentucky to get some depth back on their team. This weekend, a big game between Alabama and Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa, and also coincidentally, the next stop on the Arch Manning Fall Tour will be in Tuscaloosa. You can bet the CBS camera crews are going to find Arch Manning, keep cutting to him throughout the game, but Arch, the number 1 ranked player in the class of 2023, according to 24/7 Sports. He's the son of Cooper Manning, the nephew of Peyton and Eli, grandson of Archie. After Saturday's Alabama game, Manning will then go to Texas on October 16th, then Ole Miss on October 23rd, and Clemson on October 30th. So he'll be continuing his tour, but a big game this weekend that he will be at. Over in South Carolina, Shane Beamer doing a little damage control at his weekly press conference on Tuesday. Said he's not happy with the performance of his team following their loss to Kentucky. Said they were outplayed in all 3 phases, but he warned it is not a Chicken Little situation. He said coaching certainly has to be better, but the real travesty in this whole situation would be if we didn't get better as a football team. We're 2-2. It's still September, and the sky is not falling. Beamer added that the guys in the building know we got a good football team, and we're excited to go play on Saturday. The Gamecocks host Troy on Saturday night, a game they should win. And then some winnable games after this, a trip to Tennessee and then home for Vanderbilt. Not saying they will win those games, but certainly winnable. If they can win those, I think everybody in South Carolina will maybe settle down after the 2 straight losses. Over at Tennessee, running back Tyon Evans, he talked yesterday about how excited he is for the upcoming game against Missouri. Talking with reporters, Evans has rushed for over 200 yards with 2 touchdowns so far in his first season at Rocky Top. Evans talked about what he's seen from Missouri's defense, and he said, quote, "I don't want to get into it," paused, and then said, "We're going to have some fun." If you haven't paid attention, the Vols and Missouri have both struggled to stop the run so far this year. The Vols have allowed 446 rushing yards through 4 games, while Missouri has allowed a whopping 1,084 yards rushing to opposing offenses. So maybe a problem for both teams stopping the run this week. Over at Missouri, Coach Eli Drinkwitz also discussed the foot injury that has slowed down Ohio State transfer Mookie Cooper from becoming that big-time weapon that they expected of him this season. He was asked about Cooper at his press conference Tuesday, said he still isn't fully back from that foot injury he suffered in fall camp, and they're trying to figure out the best approach to get him all the way back. But the coach admitted that he's himself has set him back. Cooper has 10 catches for 95 yards this season. Missouri takes on Tennessee on Saturday, noon Eastern, from Columbia on the SEC Network. Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman was on with McElroy and Cole Cubelic in the morning on Jocks FM yesterday, and he was asked about the value that Barry Odom brings in developing a game plan for the opponent as his defensive coordinator. Pittman said the greatest thing about him is that he can be multiple, and the greatest asset that he has is that his players are in there just waiting for him to say, all right, this is what we're going to do in the game plan. So the belief that he has earned from the defensive kids is that what we're going to do is phenomenal. Pittman also noted, with Arkansas's 3-man front, it may appear that opponents can run the ball against it, but it hasn't happened yet. That may not be the case this week with the road trip to Georgia, but Sam Pittman said we're going to figure it out. Over at LSU, head coach Ed Ogeron said that the Bayou Bengals still have a few things they need to fix as they get ready to host Auburn on Saturday night. He said one of those things is the run game. He said we need to do more of the gap plays and RPOs. That's going to be our strength. We still need to work on our wide zone. As far as our approach with the running backs, we're still not getting the same thing we want out of it. We got a lot of work to do in the run game. We have to be better, get better production on first downs to where it's 2nd and 5, 2nd and 3, not 2nd and long. Ogeron also sent a message to LSU Tiger fans. It'll be an 8 o'clock Central kickoff on Saturday night. And Coach O said, so you got to pace yourself. Don't start early. You know what that means. LSU fans like to start tailgating and drinking early. A long day of drinking out at the tailgate. But Coach O said, expect Tiger Stadium to be full. Said, we're going to need all y'all. It's a big game for the Tigers. Can't wait to see everybody Saturday night. Auburn and LSU, by the way, have not played a night game in Baton Rouge since 2013. LSU won that game 35-21. Over at Florida, defensive coordinator Todd Grantham talking with the media and took an unexpected shot at the Tennessee Volunteers. Grantham said it's going to take some extra time getting his defense ready, drawing up plays to scheme for the big-time playmakers for the Wildcats, running back Chris Rodriguez, wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. And talking with the reporters, he said, quote, it's going to be a much more difficult challenge than, say, last week. In case you missed it, the Gators handled up on Tennessee last week, shutting them out in the second half. So Tennessee probably not happy with that. Dan Mullen threw a little bit of shade at the Kentucky Wildcats on Monday when he was meeting with reporters. And a reporter asked him about Kentucky wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, and Dan Mullen looked at his notes and said, which one? What number? He said, I know numbers. You know what I'm saying? The reporter who asked the question followed up by clarifying that Wan'Dale Robinson is number 1, to which Mullen replied, oh, I got you. Yeah. Look, I'm not saying Dan Mullen needs to know every roster across the SEC, but you would think he would know the name of one of the big-time playmakers he's about to face in a big SEC game this weekend. Over at Vanderbilt, Coach Clark Lee revealed during his Tuesday presser that Ben Bresnahan has fully recovered from his injury he suffered week 1. Bresnahan suffered a lower body injury, only managed 14 yards receiving on 2 catches before leaving that game. He had a breakout year last year at tight end for the Commodores, 300 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. So Vandy hoping he'll be back ready to go against UConn this Saturday night. And lastly, on the recruiting front, on Tuesday, Alabama got some good news. 4-star offensive lineman Elijah Pritchett picked the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's a Georgia native, made his announcement official in a video on social media, chose the Tide over Georgia, USC, and Florida State. Pritchett is the number 9 offensive tackle in the class of 2022. Alabama now has 15 players in the 2022 recruiting class. When we return, we're going to hear from Cole Cubelic, get his thoughts on the SEC after week 4, heading into week 5. That's next. Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And Want to remind you guys that there is no better place to get all your betting action in, and that is at betonline.ag. They're back and better than ever. All eyes on the gridiron. We got college football, we got NFL, we got action just about every other night of the week. BetOnline, as always, is your number one spot for all things pro and college football. We got baseball playoffs right around the corner. It is all there for you. A new updated website and interface, even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline.ag is your number one source for everything football. If you head to their website right now, you can do so on your mobile device. Sign up today, get a 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up when you use the promo code NFL100. From football to basketball to MLB, they have got you covered at BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, they're your online sportsbook experts. Going along here, Locked On SEC. And wanted to let you guys hear, our buddy Matt Moscona, he hosts the Locked On LSU podcast. He does a weekly segment with Cole Cubelic from the SEC Network, ESPN, Jocks FM. Of course, you know Cole. He's got tremendous insight when it comes to all things SEC. And he joins Matt Moscona every week on his radio show on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. So I figured we'd let you hear a little bit of what Cole had to say with Matt this week. First up, Matt asked Cole, should TJ Finley start for Auburn this weekend at LSU?
That's a complicated question, and I'm just going to answer it the first way that I think about, and that is, what would I do? And keep in mind, for people to hear this, I'm not there every day. I'm not at practice every day. I'm not in the quarterback meeting room, so I don't know all those things. If it were me, Bo Nix would still be my starting quarterback, because even though TJ came in, helped you find a win, made a couple big plays, there were plenty of things about his performance that were not great, and that I'm sure he did not grade out in a plus on that particular player, particular situation. But it was impressive what he came in to do nonetheless. If it's me, Matt, I have the conversation of, I pull TJ aside and I basically tell him, listen, if you were in his shoes and you had done everything he had done going into this season, before this season, during this season to earn that starting job, we would not take it away from you because of one bad half of football. And we would give you that opportunity to get it back. That being said, you better have your ass ready, because we got a pretty good feeling that something very similar is going to happen again. And when it does, we're going to make that move. And when we make that move again, it's going to be the last time we make it. And then it's yours from there on out. So that's how I would have that conversation, because I do think Bo Nix deserves a chance to sort of be the guy. And then I think you avoid some of the things that you were kind of maybe halfway alluding to, and that is the fact that TJ played at LSU, coming over there to play at night, starting the game, that gives you a week of anticipation. You don't really know how that's going to go. I think you avoid a lot of that by just saying, hey, Bo's going to get the start. Obviously, the leash is a little bit shorter. We know the things that have been happening. We know what we're looking for. Those things take place again. We're going to make that move. And we're not making it this time with the thought process of, hey, we hope you can come in and save us again. We're making it with the thought process that we're replacing our starting quarterback for good.
Next up, Matt asked Cole, how good really is this Arkansas Razorbacks team?
They are a very good football team. And yeah, that's another thing, just kind of big picture college football, that I think we lose sight of sometimes. And, we want to know, do they have a better quarterback? How many draft picks do they have? How have their recruiting been? So on and so forth. But, what makes Arkansas good is, first and foremost, the kids have bought in. The effort that they put forth every single week. There's the biggest difference between last year and 2 years ago. When you put that Arkansas film on, Matt, and the effort was night and day. Guys finishing blocks, multiple players showing up to make the tackle, nobody giving up on plays, the backside of plays defensively, tracking plays down. offensive guys, trying to get 5, 15, 20 yards downfield to get an extra block. It was night and day. It was completely different. So I think first and foremost, that is totally different, and that's something you're going to get. And then the plan that you get offensively and defensively every week. I don't know when the last time I came out of watching their game on Sunday or had their game and said to myself, man, they got outcoached on either side of the ball or completely. It hasn't happened in a long time. Go look at the Alabama game last year. Yeah, the score was bad, but they didn't get outcoached, and they held Mac Jones to 208 yards passing. I mean, they made life more difficult on that Alabama offense than maybe any other team Alabama played last year. So they are very well coached. They give great effort. They bought in, and now they've added a few more guys. The defensive line is pretty good. The quarterback's coming around with what he's able to do through the air. We know he can hurt you with his legs. You got one of the best safeties in college football. You got a group of linebackers. Let's just be honest, they're not going to play in the NFL, but they know how to do what's being asked of them inside their scheme. Offensive line plays with great continuity. Probably no NFL guys there either, but they play great ball together and have a great understanding of what the scheme is asking them to do on each individual play. So I do think they're a very good football team. And again, they might not be a team that everybody really likes to talk about for a lot of those reasons. But I think a lot of those reasons that people like to ignore go a long way in making them a good football team.
Next up, Matt kind of hypothesized and asked Cole if Arkansas were to go 8-4 or even better, could Sam Pittman be the coach of the year in the SEC?
He should be coach of the year if he goes 8-4. I don't care what Alabama does. I don't care what Ole Miss does. I don't care what Georgia does. If Sam Pittman goes 8-4 with what I perceive to be the hardest schedule in the country entering the season, and I think there were some metrics that actually had it as that, he should be the SEC coach of the year, and I don't really think there should be a conversation about it.
More from Cole Cubelic with our buddy Matt Moscona coming up next. Need to remind you guys about Built Bar. They are still the best tasting protein bar ever. They've got their limited time flavor, the cookie dough chunk that I was able to try just last week. Really, really good. Go check that out. Check out the 9 delicious flavors they got on their website, from the coconut to the cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, my personal favorite, salted caramel, double chocolate. There's literally something for everyone. And if you haven't tried all of them, I would just say go get the mixed box. You can find it on their website. Get 2 of each of their 9 flavors. Get to try them all. Find out which one is your favorite. Might have 1, might have 2 favorites. Whatever it is, you'll know. And need to know this. Built Bar flavors not only are the best tasting, but they're healthy as well. 17 grams of protein packed into majority of the Built Bars, only 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs. Can't go wrong with that. Go order them today and get that raspberry, mint brownie, whatever it is you like. Just go to BuiltBar.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. If you've never ordered from them before, use LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your first order. When you use the promo code LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Start making some healthier decisions. The New Year's right around the corner. You know you're going to be eating tons at Thanksgiving and Christmas. So start making wise decisions now. It's football season. We know we're going ham at the tailgates, eating stuff we shouldn't eat throughout the week. Let's save ourselves. Reach for a Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And speaking of listening, we're letting you hear from our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU. He talks weekly with Cole Cubelic on his Baton Rouge radio show, 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. And Cole talks all things SEC with him. So continuing on, letting you hear some of what Cole Cubelic had to say this week. Matt asked Cole, did you learn anything from the LSU-Mississippi State game this past Saturday from either team?
I learned, well, maybe not learned, but it was confirmed that Mississippi State is the weirdest team in college football. I continue to be sort of amazed at how they win games, how they lose games. I guess I should just say how they operate. I mean, they outgained LSU by what, 143 yards or something? I mean, they outrushed LSU, which, I mean, I don't know how many times in the tenure of Mike Leach, however long that ends up being, that we're going to say that Mississippi State outrushes an opponent. It just doesn't happen very often. I mean, the only game that they have not outgained an opponent this year was NC State, and they looked dominant in that game. Like that was their best performance of the season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Will Rogers is throwing darts. They're marching up and down the field. Can't get in the end zone because their red zone offense is not very good. And then that brings up just another question of how weird they are that, they refuse to try to run the ball the majority of the time. And then they get inside the 5 and they want to go try to run the ball. And I mean, I just don't like, that's not what you do. I don't really care about where you are on the field, but you're not good at that. So I don't know why you think you'd be good at that when things compress, but nonetheless, you're right. It's a good win for LSU on the road in the morning against a team that, I mean, I guess because they're so weird, it's got to be kind of difficult to face because they do different things. And by the way, you're going to face a team that was going to throw the ball between 60, 75 times, and you lose your best player on defense going in. Yeah. So, and I know they didn't play a lot of man coverage against an air raid team, but still, I mean, it's a guy that can make plays, a guy that covers ground, and you didn't have it. So, LSU's offensive line still a work in progress. I saw some stuff on the left side that was just, it can't happen. I mean, recognition, turning guys loose. It's just, there are things that absolutely have to improve, but you still found a way to win. And at the end of the day, that's the most important part.
Next thing Cole talked about, he said it seems like a lot of fans of teams nowadays expect perfection in wins, and some fans get discouraged by close wins or ugly wins. Cole talked with Matt, just asked a general thought on that idea, and Cole kind of ran with it.
I think a bigger picture problem sort of in college football right now, and I don't know if this has just been 8 or 12 years in the making with, Urban at Ohio State or Nick at Alabama or Dabo at Clemson, but we've become so enamored with the performance as opposed to the result. And there are so many times, I mean, I've got multiple examples of this season that the result has just not been enough for fans. No better case than Alabama last week against Florida, where their fans were just, I mean, there's a large portion of that fan base that's melting down.
Yeah.
The world was ending for a lot of those folks. You won the game at the Swamp against a top 12 team. I mean, take it and move on. So I just, the fact that you have won a couple games in a row and you're finding different ways to improve in different areas of your team. Yeah, I absolutely think you should feel better about things.
Lastly, Cole Cubelic talking with our buddy Matt Moscona, 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. Matt, of course, host of Locked On LSU, asked after the loss to Arkansas, where does that leave Texas A&M now? And Mississippi State coming to town this weekend. Where does that leave A&M, their hopes of an undefeated season, taking a loss to the Razorbacks?
Circling the wagons, honestly, because they were not the more physical team at any point in that game. And when you think about the Kenyon Green, DeMarvin Leal, PV, some of the guys that they do have up front, they do have NFL guys, O-line and D-line. Now, their O-line is a patchwork unit right now. They're having to move guys around. I mean, Kenyon Green goes to left tackle in the spring. Then he starts the season at right tackle. Then they bump him down the guard. Then he has to go from right guard to left tackle in that game. You know how Matthews at center. You're playing a true freshman at right tackle. That's not ideal, and I get that, and I know that. But the reality is you have one of the better running backs in the league. You have maybe one of the better slot guys in the league. You have maybe the best tight end in the league. You have a Swiss Army knife running back, hybrid receiver, whatever you want to call him, athlete, we'll say, that's about as good at doing what he does as anybody in the league. You shouldn't have to have great quarterback play to make things work offensively. And Jimbo's system does require that. I mean, it requires you to be a guy that can make decisions, a guy that can process things, and then obviously a guy that can make some throws, some tough throws at that. So all that said, they're in a bad spot right now because the quarterback doesn't look confident at all. And the offensive line's not able to give him a ton of time, and they're not able to open up holes for Spiller like they did a year ago. And then defensively, that D-line had been carrying them, and all of a sudden last week, I don't really know what that was. That was uncharacteristic of what they had been for the majority of the season. So I think there's got to be some soul searching going on right now at A&M, trying to figure out what their identity is going to be, who they're going to be moving forward. And then all of a sudden, like we just talked about, they get the weirdest team in the country coming in. How do you handle that? Like, do you go out? Could you go out and gain 250 yards and win this game? Do you need to put up 450 yards and 40 points to win this game? Like this. And that's why when I say that, I think it's a little bit relevant when I say they're the weirdest team in the country is like, I don't think there's a direct blueprint as to what to do to beat them. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be super tough to beat for everybody, but it's just you might have to be very different to beat them, or you might not play a great game in a couple facets and still be able to find a way to beat them, or you might play well and still not beat them. And it's just there's a lot of ways that game with those guys can go, and that's kind of why I keep bringing that up.
That again, the courtesy of our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. Their conversation with Cole Cubelic, who does a tremendous job, and we appreciate the insight of Cole and getting to hear a little bit from him. That is going to do it for us here on this edition of Locked On SEC. Remember, you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, doing a video version now on YouTube, and we appreciate you and thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. I'm Chris Gordy. We'll be back tomorrow getting into a little bit of look ahead, looking more at some of the games happening this weekend. Of course, the Ole Miss Alabama game, the big one looming, but Arkansas, can they put up a fight against Georgia? Don't doubt the Razorbacks. Everyone who has, they've answered the call. We will see plenty of great games happening this weekend. We'll get into it all throughout the week here on Locked On SEC. And a quick reminder, betting on the SEC doesn't have to be a guessing game. If you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, get Lee's Lock of the Day. Follow Locked On Bets, brought to you by BetOnline AG, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. Talk to you guys tomorrow.